Hi, I'm Elodie.
And I'm Jeremy. And this is our guest tonight, Pierre.
Let's talk.
My skin is gold. My skin is gold. My skin is gold.
Well, again, Pierre, thanks for being here with us. You know, I know that not everybody in our audience is going to know you. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your life and your background?
Yeah, great. I appreciate that. So I'm married for 26 years,
Wow.
3 kids. One's 25, one's 20, and one is 17. And live in West Seattle. I have 3 businesses that I own and operate.
Wow.
I'm part of the minority-owned businesses for the state of Washington. All of them are part of the minority and women-owned, because my wife is part owner as well.
Cool.
So,
what are your businesses?
Businesses, one is a travel notary business, and so it's called Newsome Mobile Notary. And the other one is kind of a complement to that called Notary Match, which we're going to scale nationwide. So we're going to be in every city.
That's awesome.
And every major city in the United States. So, and the last one is just a consulting company, a technology staffing company.
So, you shared that, you're a father of 3.
Yes.
So with everything going on in the country with social injustice, social unrest, and the pandemic that's going on, how have you, coped with that? How are you talking to your kids about that? How are they dealing with all of that?
Yeah, good question. I mean, gosh, it's been a challenge, I'll be honest. It's been really heavy, really dense kind of stuff happening. It's made me kind of down and depressed. So being able to have a lot of conversations with friends, one of them being Jeremy, we've talked a lot, and other friends of mine. I think that's the key thing of getting some of that stuff out and really not keeping it in. And then I've been to some marches too. So I've been able to participate in marches and feeling, and then what's been kind of heartwarming to see, one of the marches I went to was in West Seattle where I live, and to seeing all the, there was majority, white people marching. And so that gave me some encouragement. It really was helpful.
Awesome.
So the conversations are tough. Like, Dad, what do you think is happening? Why are these things happening? They're old enough now to kind of understand, and I don't like them to say pick a side, because I think it's really hard, but to really kind of embrace like Black Lives Matter and embrace some of these things happening, which I think is a good thing.
So speaking of that, have there ever been a situation where they have seen you be pulled over or being mistreated because of, who you are and the color of your skin? And can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. Yeah, there have been. And like one time when I was just driving, they were little. And so they must have been, 10. And Bailey,
10 is little. I mean, the kids are old. They were little. Like,
well, they're older now, so they weren't
maybe
like babies.
15.
They weren't babies, but I think Real C was 10, and it was just Real C and Bailey and myself in the car. And so, we were just driving. I was driving the speed limit, and all of a sudden, the sirens came up, and we just pulled over, and then the guy came up to the car and said, kind of, what are you doing in this neighborhood kind of thing? And I went, well, I don't live too far from here. Yeah. And then he said, I think you were speeding or something like that. Something like that. I said, well, you're in a, I said, well, okay, well, all right, that's great. And so my daughters were just like looking, because, I always taught them to respect the police and, respect authority. And I think, so they were like, what happened, Dad? After we left, and he ended up giving me a ticket. So, and so I was like, okay, give me a ticket. That's cool. And then they asked what happened. I ended up fighting it, ended up winning, I believe.
Had that conversation for you changed with your daughters and your son? Was that different, or you pretty much have that same conversation?
Same conversation. Yeah. Especially as they kind of starting to enter in the corporate world. My daughter's a junior in high school. Even my son. Who's had some jobs here and there. I always tell him that, make sure you're you have to tell them how to act a certain way, how to talk a certain way.
Yeah.
When you get home, you can kind of let your hair down, so to speak, and kind of be yourself, be your authentic self. But when you're out, people are going to perceive different things about you just because of how you look.
Yeah.
And I think that's the trick right there. Because because you look a certain way.
Yeah.
People are going to be affected by that, and maybe fearful of that, and not even your skin, but just how you talk too, because you can get that kind of that angry black man syndrome, angry black women.
I know for me, growing up, we just with the background that I have, being African and then coming here and just trying to learn the whole culture and stuff. Talking about race wasn't really something that was persistent in our family, but I think it changed when my brother Reed kind of got older and was experiencing that, and to be able to see him be more vocal, and I think because of all the situations that he was going through, it really brought it home for us. And with now that we have a 16-year-old, he's learning to drive and having to have the talk with him, and I just remember when he was learning to drive and just man, that is not the club that I want him to be a part of, of having to think about that, like when I get pulled over, okay, make sure, I'm staying forward, don't, be too free, and I just am like, man, that sucks that, 2020, we're still having to teach, our kids that. That's our kids, sad. I have kids. I don't have kids, guys. But, no, you're right. My brother's having to deal with that.
And I know, for me, having a black son coming into that age group, right? And I appreciate you guys sharing that, because I think for me it's really important, right? How do I have that? I mean, my wife can have it, but as a dad, I need to be able to have that and have that same understanding.
Yeah.
That, hopefully one day we don't need to have those conversations.
Yeah.
I mean, one other point on this topic, Elodie had brought up earlier about all the things going on, right? So obviously we all see the media, we see the news, we see all the different pain going on, especially affecting the black community. Yeah. From George Floyd, as you had brought up earlier, to Jacob Blake, to Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, all the way back to Eric Garner. It keeps going back further and further, right?
Rodney King, even.
Rodney King.
Rodney King,
That's...
I mean, it goes back and back,
right?
Yeah. But even in recent years, especially in 2020, as we're here today, how is that affecting you and your family now? I mean, what are your feelings and thoughts on that stuff? How is that impacting you?
No, that's a good question. I think we're becoming numb to it. Where I'll be honest, don't want to. Some days I don't really want to talk to white people.
Yeah, I felt that.
Yeah, I'm just being real.
Sure, me
Other
too.
than you, Jeremy.
you don't count.
No, Jeremy and Brad.
So I remember, especially after. No, it's good, especially after George Floyd.
Well, I appreciate that, Pierre, and thanks for sharing. I mean, I know that's not easy, and the things going on aren't easy. You talked about owning a few businesses.
Yeah.
And I know you've been in the professional world a long time. Elodie and I are both fortunate enough to have known you for a while. In the professional world and as a business person, have you felt the same thing? Have you felt racism? Have you felt that you had to be better or had to present yourself in a certain way that maybe others didn't?
Yeah, I have. One thing I can point back to, there's a couple, but the specific one is pre-having my own businesses, I was in the financial world for almost 20 years. So I was institutional trader and financial advisor and all that. So
you did wealth management, all those kind of things.
Yeah. So I was one of the only black wealth management officers here in the Seattle area. Okay. And so and along with that, what they were doing with me and my book of business is they would take away my book of business and give me a book of business that's on a lower end.
What?
Yeah, and so there was we actually won a discrimination lawsuit.
Oh wow!
Yeah, and so with the company, and that I was, and so because of they're discriminating against me as an advisor, not really giving me that book of business that I observe, and a lot of it was because I'm talking mostly people that I'm managing their money. Well, all of them. Well, no, there's only one that I can name, but I can't name him because he's a popular person. But they were all white. So where the discrimination came in is that because I'm black, probably unable to
manage.
articulate or
okay.
communicate or manage their money
Wow.
and how they may view me.
Did
So
you
the
get that from the company, or was that from the customers? Both.
For both, right? So from I was hearing that some customers didn't want to work with me.
Wow.
And then the company, instead of like, no,
So fighting for you, they would just, like, take it
clients
away.
Being a black owned business, over the phone, I think here's another caveat to this whole thing. Over the phone, when I'm communicating, I can sound white. And so you talk to most blacks, they know how to what person to put on at different times. They know when I need to be my Peter versus Pierre.
Yes.
All right. So that's essentially it. So I got to be a different person when I'm communicating to some people.
You sound like you relate to that.
Oh yeah. Yes. A
How
lot
so?
of times. When it comes to anytime I'm on the phone, whether it's booking an appointment for something or calling customer service, there's a tone, and it's like announcing all the words and using specific words instead of, my normal
Colloquial speech.
Yes,
yeah.
exactly.
So how does that make you feel personally? I mean, when those experiences happen, I mean, it's one thing to look at it intellectually.
Yeah.
How does it make you feel?
Makes you feel kind of less than, right? Makes you feel like you're not worthy, and you got to do, what do I also have to do, right? I'm who I am, and I'm a little bit hesitant on even putting my picture on my website.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm hesitant on putting my picture on
Because
LinkedIn.
you think it might repel people from wanting to.
Absolutely.
Oh, wow.
And so it goes to that level where I got to be strategic about even putting my face out.
Ah,
Yeah.
Terrible.
Yeah.
And I think that affects how we do business, right? I mean,
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, that I feel your pain. That hurts me.
Yeah.
to even hear that. So, Pierre, thanks for sharing all that. I mean, it's really meaningful to us to have you here and to have you share those things. I know some of that stuff's not easy.
Yeah.
I know some of it's really challenging, just like Elodie sharing last week. I mean, really being honest and raw.
Yeah.
I also know you're a man of faith. You're doing a lot of work in the Christian church. And one of the questions we wanted to ask you, I think this is even a hard question for me, is what has your experience been as a Christian, and have you experienced racism in the church?
Yeah, well, my experience has mostly been the church has been a safe place, right? I feel that definitely. And however, there are some moments where when you come in, when you're in the church, that I feel like I can't relate to certain people. But what I'm saying is being able to be my true authentic self and kind of let my hair down.
Yeah.
I think that's where I kind of get
Lets
into
his hair down?
Yeah, let my hair down.
This is figuratively at this point, right? Not literally. He said.
Really like be yourself.
He only shows his hair to his
Be
real
yourself.
friends.
I got you.
I have a wig.
He has a wig on, guys.
Underneath this, I have something I can
The work is impeccable.
You know that
I can
Samuel L.
see the
Jackson movie.
You guys.
Anyways, you can let your hair down.
Yeah,
figuratively.
I mean, and really be my authentic self, right? Culturally, and so I think that's where some of the roadblocks can come, where there's perhaps some, not necessarily some divisions, but some areas where I feel like if you see blacks at church just hanging together or talking together, there's certain things that we're talking about. Can you relate to that?
Yeah. I remember it wasn't until college, being part of the campus ministry, and that's when I really felt like, wow.
Yeah.
And just feeling like that different side of me that I've never been able to experience, And it was like letting my hair down and just feeling safe and being able to really just like be. It was the first time I didn't have to code switch, and I didn't even know that I was doing that, you know? That was just freeing.
No, I agree. And for me, when I came into the church, it was the couple who met me, or the guy who met me. They were a black couple, John and Karen Thomas.
Okay.
And I feel like if it was somebody who wasn't black would have met me at that time, I wouldn't have came out.
Or it may have been harder.
It would have been a lot more
taken a little
challenging.
longer.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I
Yeah,
feel like
yeah.
because I connected with John right away with basketball, with culture, and we watch sports together, and I can just talk to him about hip hop music, different things that I feel like I can really talk to and have those like-minded, relatable things
nuances
we can
and
discuss.
stuff like that.
And so there's been things that have been said like, "Oh, you're being too cool."
Mm-hmm.
Somebody said, and so I was like, "What do you mean by that?"
Yeah, I
And
was
they really
just gonna say, what does
yeah,
that mean?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
you stop being so cool. You need to
stop being so black or something.
That's what I
Oh.
kind of hinted it as. I was like, "Well, what do you mean by that?" And then didn't really get an answer. And so I'm saying I'm just being myself.
Yeah.
So that for a long time with that particular person, I was felt like I had to be somebody else around
like
there.
there's just like you couldn't go past
Right.
a certain point. I remember in doing Black Joy, there was a question that was posed on there was, what would it look like for the church to be a safe place to talk about race and stuff? And I remember when my parents were watching it, my dad asked me, he's like, well, have you ever, had that happen? And I was sharing with him, like, I don't really know if it was like explicit, but for a long time I've been told like, oh wow, Ellie, you're really loud, or like, wow, I can hear your voice from a mile away and stuff like that. And before I was like, haha, yeah, like I'm loud, whatever. But as I've gotten older and knowing that what that means, for a Black woman to be called loud, and that's been something that I have been told multiple times in the church. And coming back from, college, I've had to really like, okay, I'm not going to be, I'm not going to laugh as loud, or I'm not going to talk as loud, and kind of muting myself a little bit.
Right.
And trying to figure out like, is that, I'm not sure if that's like a racial thing, or if it's just, they're like, oh, Elodie, you're loud, ha ha ha, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know, that's been something that I've been kind of like contemplating and really wrestling with.
Right.
So on the other side of that, obviously, many churches are majority white, and then there's majority Black churches, and there's
Right,
majority Asian churches, and majority
Yeah.
Latino churches. But in a mixed church, where you still find yourself being the minority,
Yeah.
right? How do people like me, or look like me, how should we approach that, right? How should we see it from a different perspective? What is helpful that we can learn and also be more aware of? I don't want what could be perceived as an insensitivity,
Yeah.
right? Or saying something and being offended if I am challenged, right? So how can that dynamic be made better, and we can become more aware?
Yeah.
Great question.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Go for it.
No. It's funny because I had a conversation with a brother, about the white brother, who was feeling that the guilt of him saying something in front of somebody Black, and he was transparent enough to share that with me, and humble enough, in humility, to say, here's where I'm feeling guilty about this stuff. I don't know where I'm supposed to be right now. I'm kind of lost. And so I think the first thing is, to answer your question, is the acceptance of I'm lost, right? And so with that comes a lot of humility, and also trusting that other person with your intimate feelings. I mean, that's where him and I landed, as far as, okay, are you able to trust the people? Because I feel like a lot that I have to always be kind of the one that's
Comforting.
or just giving people the benefit of the doubt, giving a lot of grace. I think when it's when the tables are turned a little bit, especially on all the stuff we're talking about, racial inequality, racism, for somebody to really lean in, it takes that, allies, right? We call them allies. Perhaps they're really not understanding, or really having that true empathy and compassion of understanding how
The long-term impacts of those things, right?
Right.
So how that systemically is in our culture, in
Yes.
our country, and those long-term impacts
Right.
that still remain.
Yeah.
It's easy to see it from, well, I'm not racist. My family didn't have slaves.
Exactly.
Instead of, wow, tell me about how that has impacted your life or
Right.
your community, or Black people as a whole. What is that impact like? And
Right.
I think for a lot of people that's really important, because
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of genuine people out there who get defensive instead of saying, wow, I never thought of that. It was a long time ago for you,
Yeah.
but the implications of it for
It's
me
still
today
happening.
are still there.
Yeah.
I remember several occasions, when we're talking about allies, we got to really, what really helped me in our conversations is sometimes I would put all whites in one bucket. And Jeremy helped me with knowing that, hey, I'm with you on this.
Yes.
You had to keep
Yeah.
reminding me, don't
I'm
put
in
me
your
in that
corner.
bucket
Yeah.
with them.
No, don't do it.
Don't
Don't
put me
do
in that bucket
it.
with them. And I,
Yeah.
and I really, really appreciate that. And he
Yeah.
caught me a couple times saying it. And I, appreciated that because that
Yeah.
kind of brought me back to, okay, wait. Not everybody's out to get me.
Yeah.
Especially
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
after you have the emotions are running
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
high.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And, so anyway.
Yeah.
Amen.
So then with that, how do we, as a church, what do you think needs to come to be for us to kind of move towards reconciliation,
Yeah.
and towards being one again?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say continue to talk.
Yeah.
And not letting this moment come and go.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So many
Right.
times, this moment we've seen in the past, it comes and it goes.
Yeah. We have.
I'm still going to be doing things.
Yeah.
You guys are still doing things.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
Let's talk. That's what this is all about.
Yeah.
Getting the word out. So I have a conviction about us still moving forward with some of these things, and I think that's how we, and then the other things we're going to be doing is we're going to be speaking to some of the family group leaders, and I can tell you conversations I've had, some negative, some positive. The negative ones were just more of an ignorance of not understanding
what it is.
Yep, what
Yeah.
we're doing in the diversity and unity organization, and the positive ones keep doing what you're doing. So being able to, I feel like one of my positive skill sets is being able to bring people together.
Yeah.
And really kind of, understanding both sides, but really being able to listen to what other people have to say, right? Like there's some, and I think that's where we both have to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
slow to speak. James wants slow to speak, quick to listen.
Yeah. I feel like kind of what I mentioned last week or at the last episode is, being willing to get in the mud,
Yep.
being willing
Yeah.
to make it messy and,
Yep.
let's talk, let's work on this. And then also acknowledging that there's a
Right.
problem,
Right.
And so, which I feel like you just, nailed
Yeah.
into as well. Yeah.
And one final thing, I think
Yeah.
for both of you,
Yeah.
right? What do you really see, Pierre and Elodie? Obviously, you can continue to chime in on this. We did a little bit on the last episode, but what do you think from a structural, cultural perspective? What's the big thing you think we really need to do to make progress in this area?
You talking about
Just-
just in church or overall?
No, just overall, just as a people, so we can make real impact in our communities and culturally, that we can continue to say, hey, this is change is coming.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big question. I think there's, we've talked about this before. If it's dealing with how blacks are viewed by the police, I'm not necessarily for defunding the police, but I do know that we need to, there's monies that can be appropriated at different areas to help different facets, because there's a lot of the folks that are dealing with mental illness. My son's dealing with mental illness. So I do think being able to have some
Reallocate and
reallocate some
allocate
funds,
money.
I
Yeah.
think that's one area. So I think it's definitely a policy question.
So some policy issues we could do.
Right, and then having more education with our political figures. I think a lot of the stuff starts from the top,
Right.
Yeah.
right?
And
A lot of the
trickles
stuff,
down.
how the person on top is speaking. That's how I run my house,
Yeah.
right? If I'm not being an example of some of these things, then what can I
Then-
expect everybody
yeah.
else to be? I'm being a
Yeah.
hypocrite if
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
yeah.
saying something and doing something
Something
different.
else.
And
Yeah.
I think that's, our politicians right now are so transactional because they know that once they get into office, they're just thinking about the next time their next election. Well, I mean, it used to be where you're serving, right?
Oh, yeah.
You're
Yeah.
voting these people for office of service.
Yeah.
Now it's such.
It's
I'm
office
just-
for power.
Yeah, now it's
you
all
scratch
power.
my back.
Yeah.
So
Scratches.
how do we get back to that? Man, gosh.
What do you think about, you talked about the state and different things we could do, just teaching, one of the things I've been thinking of is teaching the full history, right? Really, I think part of the things that are missing,
Yeah.
even, what was 1619
Project,
till
that's what
today, right? The 401 years, and then these other people come out. We're starting the 1776 project. And I'm like, oh, come on, you guys are just clowns, or the 1854, whatever it was, But teaching the whole history,
yes,
right. So people, because we're given our history through what we learn in education, right. And when we run around with a certain perception of history instead of, hey, let's look at the full history. Let's look at the history of this country and really see how diverse it is. The people who really built this country. And it's not just white people. It's all people.
I just want to say thank you so much for, being here and
thanks
joining
for being
us.
with us.
Yes,
yeah,
I'm
this
glad.
has been great. I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah. Thank you guys for having me. I'm excited that I was able to share some things, and hopefully we can help, and anything I can do to help, I'm here.
And thank you for joining us. Thanks, Jack, for filming, and thanks for viewing. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
My skin is gold. My skin is gold. My skin is gold.